So the exhaust system is the last stage of the whole combustion process. After the combustion chamber's got all the energy it can and convert it to power the flywheel, now it's the exhaust system's job to get rid of it. A lot of people are thinking, well, you know what, there's those catback systems. I've seen the ads. Maybe they actually do deliver 1 or 2 miles per gallon in addition. But the chances of you getting a return on investment, if you've got a perfectly good exhaust system and you decide you're going to save money by buying this fancy exhaust system, chances are you won't save in fuel economy gains enough to pay for the exhaust before you wind up getting rid of the vehicle. But if you're already replacing an exhaust system because it's rusted out, then the difference between just a standard replacement and upgrades, that you can justify with fuel economy gains. You'll get that difference back in a reasonable amount of time. The exhaust system technology has come a long ways. Back in the 1940s, 1950s, and I've seen some pictures of this stuff, these racers would build what just made all the sense in the world to them. And it was this whole bunch of tubes going into a big tube, and just it made all, but the car didn't agree. It's like Mother Nature isn't subscribing to the same science books and racing journals that these engine builders were. But since then we started learning about such as the Helmholtz Effect. Now Helmholtz is a term normally associated with music. Take a big log, hollow it out, and cut a slit at the end, and it plays a perfect middle C in a cathedral organ. Helmholtz Effect. The way that works is the exhaust valve opens, and then you have this rush of exhaust gases coming out, becoming a mass in motion. And once in motion, it doesn't want to stop. So as this exhaust gas goes rushing out the cylinder, well, the piston gets to top dead center, and it tries to keep going and actually creates a slight vacuum back here. So it sucks out the last little bit of exhaust. Now the exhaust valve closes, and that vacuum, like a bouncing ball, pulls that mass back. And then it comes and slams back against the exhaust valve and builds a pressure pocket. And then bounces back again. If you can time opening the exhaust valve on the next cycle when it's already moving this way, then it starts sucking it out ahead of time. Helmholtz Effect. The same principle applies to intake manifold design, where you have the intake valve open, it starts creating a mass in motion effect, and then when the intake valve closes, it hits, bounces back, hits the plenum, bounces back, and now you open the intake valve and you got like a little supercharging effect. Larry Widmer built a Honda engine, naturally aspirated, no turbo, no supercharger, naturally aspirated, and he was getting 138% volumetric efficiency. That's like a turbocharger pumping about 12 pounds of boost on any other engine. But he used the Helmholtz effect on both the induction and exhaust, and at just the right RPMs, he was getting 138% volumetric efficiency. So the Helmholtz effect is one of the things that you want to look at. Shorter, fatter tubes will create that resonant Helmholtz effect at much higher RPMs. Skinnier, longer tubes create that effect at much lower RPMs. So for fuel economy, you want your intake manifold runners to be small and long. You want your exhaust primary tubes to be small and long to capitalize on that Helmholtz effect. Now in reality, if we want to be able to open the exhaust valve, get that charge in motion, close it, have it bounce once, slam, and then open the exhaust valve and capture it on what's called the first harmonic, the exhaust system would be longer than the car, just for the primary tube. But if we allow second, third, or fourth harmonics, where it bounces back a couple of times, each time losing energy, so the next one isn't as powerful as the previous one, we found that fourth harmonics, even sixth harmonics, can produce usable power gains, efficiency gains. But again, the rule of thumb is for fuel economy and torque, small diameter, long pipes on both intake and exhaust. A lot of people are aware that, bigger pipes. I'm going to upgrade to the full 2.5-inch diameter exhaust. And in reality, that slows down the velocity. And to make power requires velocity. You got to have velocity going through the induction system, velocity going through the exhaust system. That velocity takes that mass in motion concept and gets it to work for you. So big pipes create lazy, slow-moving charges. Small pipes create very fast-moving charges. And Larry Widmer, again, my #1 automotive hero, Larry Widmer tries to hit Mach 1. He tries to hit the speed of sound with his charge velocities and maintain it. Not just one little focal point, but maintain it throughout the entire system. So fluid dynamics comes into play where we got to be able to get sufficient air and fuel in and then get the exhaust out. But there's that balance where you can easily and quickly go too big. So we want to keep our velocities high. So we have exhaust headers. And again, you have your factory log, cast iron exhaust manifold. And then you have your shorty headers, which are individual tubes, but they're only about yay long. And then you have some that are long enough to where you can actually get some usable benefit. Now, if you are just looking to get better performance and economy by bolting a header on an otherwise stock engine, you'll get some, but it won't be cost effective as far as fuel economy gains, return on investment. But if you have a cracked manifold, for example, the Jeep 4-liter, a lot of the small block Chevy engines and pickups, there's a lot of vehicles out there that are prone to crack the exhaust manifold. So if you're in a position where you have to replace it anyways, then the upgrade to a more efficient header now becomes cost effective. And you'll actually see a return. The pipes themselves, a lot of times the manifold is fine, and the pipe to the catalytic converter is fine, but from there on back, it rusts out. The muffler rusts out, the tailpipe rusts out, and so you have to get those pipes new. Don't fall into the trap of, okay, I got a 2.25-inch exhaust from the cat back, I'm going to upgrade to a 2.5. What I would recommend instead is stick with the 2.25, but stay away from compression bends. Compression bends create these like corrugated ribs on the inside of the bend, and they're going to be restricted in a bad way. A mandrel bend is you have the exact same diameter around the bend, and it's a special bender required to do this, but just staying with 2.25 but going mandrel bends, I think you'll find you're able to maintain velocity and that you don't kill with turbulence, you don't kill the exhaust on the bends. Now, exhaust produces heat. So I mentioned back in the engine section coatings. So if you have a cast iron exhaust manifold or header, to put some kind of a thermal barrier coating on there, that'll keep more of the heat in the pipe. You can also get thermal wraps. They used to be asbestos way back when in the 60s. Now they're a fiberglass wrap, and you just literally wrap the manifold. Here's an exhaust manifold with the wrap. You can see there's a bare spot here or there. It's not uber critical, but the vast majority of the entire exhaust manifold has been wrapped with that fiberglass wrap. Now that's going to hold the heat in. You get two benefits. One, as the exhaust gases cool off, they'll lose velocity. And let's face it, you get exhaust gas going through a pipe. The pipe's going to act as a heat exchanger. So the pipe gets hot and sheds the heat to the environment. And then it cools the gases inside. So they get slower and slower because as they cool, they contract and you lose velocity. Second of all, where's that heat going to go? Well, if it's under the hood, that heat's going to go to your intake charge. It's going to go to your intake manifold. It's going to go to belts. It's going to go to hoses. So by containing that heat, now your belts and hoses last longer. Now your intake manifold charge is cooler and denser. And so it offers a lot of benefits. There's a third benefit involved also. When we get to the tuning section, you'll find that one of the strategies used by modern computers in a car is to stoke up the catalytic converter. So they use the downstream oxygen sensor heater circuit as a temperature sensor, where they can determine the temperature of the catalytic converter based on the resistance of that heater circuit. And when the cat gets too cold, the computer says, "Fire it up, baby," and the injectors just start dumping excess fuel in there to stoke up the fire in the catalytic converter. Well, if you have the exhaust system wrapped literally from the head, just like this picture, coming right off the manifold, and then the pipe that bolts to that is wrapped right up to the inlet of the catalytic converter, you'll find that your fuel economy goes up because the computer doesn't have to stoke up that fire in the cat as often, because the cat stays hotter because it's being fed hotter exhaust gases. The exhaust gases come out of the cylinder head, they're still on fire. And what is fire? Discombobulated molecules, free-floating atoms, electrons galore in every direction. So you have an electrostatic charge. And as the exhaust gases move through the pipe at a high velocity, just that friction of the exhaust gases going across that conductive pipe also create electrical charges. Now, have you ever built up a static electric charge and a feather will stick to the bottom of your arm? That electrostatic charge builds up in the exhaust and starts creating a magnet that's trying to attract the exhaust gases themselves to it. And now the exhaust gases are trying to move out, but there's this magnet trying to hold them in place. If you ran ground wires, I would start at the tailpipe, like the rear bumper, minimum 18 gauge wire, and just run to body ground and ground out that electrostatic charge. And then move up a little bit and run a second one. The more the better. 3 would be a good number. Now that electrostatic charge that's building up in the pipe is being short-circuited to ground, and the exhaust flows easier. And you get improved performance. Any questions on exhaust system?
Wouldn't the things that hang the exhaust be grounding it out?
That's an excellent question. Exhaust hangers are rubber isolated. So what you typically have is you have some kind of a hook coming off the body or mounting point, and then you have some kind of rubber strap or donut looking thing, and then you have a hook coming off the exhaust pipe so that electrically they're isolated by the hanger itself. That allows the exhaust to wiggle around, you hit a bump, and it's free to do what it needs to do and not crank. But it's not electrically grounding it. As far as the grounding, if you go to a new car dealer and you look underneath the gasoline-powered vehicles, most of them do have a ground strap somewhere in the exhaust. It's usually like a braided metal, and it doesn't last very long.
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
So even though the new car companies are doing this, by the time you need an exhaust system, that strap's long gone.